4 years old. We were at a rec pool, the kind of ordinary Saturday afternoon that does not announce itself as important. I was in the hot tub, which means I was relaxed, resting, the kind of rest a father earns after a long work week, where you let the heat work on muscles that you've been carrying weight for days. But I was not fully off. I am never fully off, and I cannot tell you exactly what made me look up. I cannot point to a sound. I cannot point to a movement. I do not know what made me lift my eyes at that specific moment. What I can tell you is that I was in the hot tub, and I looked across the pool and I saw my daughter, and she was drowning. Not the way drowning looks in movies, no flailing, no screaming, no one turning to look. Real drowning is quiet. Real drowning is a 4-year-old slipping below the surface in the middle of a crowded pool, surrounded by lifeguards whose eyes are somewhere else. Their eyes were somewhere else. Mine were not. I was out of the hot tub before I had finished processing what I was seeing. Across the pool, into the water, and Abigail was safe. She remembers that to this day. And I want you to hear something before we go anywhere else today. The lifeguards at the pool were trained, certified, paid to watch that water. I was the dad in the hot tub. The difference was not training. The difference was a decision about whose responsibility my family was. Whose responsibility? That decision had already been made long before we got into that pool. This is episode 7, Pillar P, Protector and Provider, the man who guards what he loves. Welcome to the Father Blueprint. I'm Doug Androsky, founder of Fathering the Fatherless. This is the show for men who are done fathering by accident and ready to father on purpose. We're 3 pillars down: spiritual leader, husband who loves sacrificially, encourager and nurturer, and today is Pillar P. And this is the pillar where the rubber meets the road. Before I had pulled Abigail out of that water, years before, I had a conversation with a man that I never forgotten. A different season, and he told me something with complete confidence. He said there is nothing in the Bible about protection. He said God protects his people, and a Christian man's job is to trust God and let him handle it. That's the whole concept of a father standing between his family and harm was, in his view, not actually a biblical idea. I want to be fair to him. He was not malicious. He had a theology, sincerely held, and genuinely believed, but it was wrong. And I knew it was wrong. I just needed to be able to say exactly why. So I went looking. Nehemiah chapter 4. The wall of Jerusalem is being rebuilt. The enemies are circling. And Nehemiah, the man God has appointed to lead this rebuilding, does not tell the people to put down their tools and pray. He tells them to pick up their swords. He looks his men in the eye and says, "Fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Fight." That's in the Bible. God instructed his people to fight. God commanded men to stand between their families and the threat. God did not say, "Trust me and stand still." He said, "Trust me and pick up a sword, your sword." The theology that says God will protect, therefore you do not need to, that is not faith. That is passivity dressed up as faith. And I will say it plainly. It is one of the most dangerous ideas circulating in Christian homes right now, because it produces men who are spiritually awake and practically unprepared. Spiritually awake and practically unprepared. Men who pray for their families at night and could not protect them in the parking lot. Look, God absolutely protects. Scripture is full of his protection over his people. And in Scripture, that protection almost always comes through human beings who were prepared, positioned, and willing to act. Gideon's 300, David and his sling, Nehemiah's workers with tools in one hand and swords in the other. God uses prepared men. He does not replace them. A father who trusts God and trains himself is not showing a lack of faith. He is showing the kind of faith that has a body attached, the kind that gets out of a hot tub when the moment requires it. Years ago, before I met Andrea, I was introduced to a framework that has shaped how I move through the world ever since. It was taught to me by a man with a background in intelligence work. He used a simplified version of a system originally developed by a Marine colonel named Jeff Cooper. 3 colors, 3 states of awareness. And let me walk you through them, because this is the practical handle on what protection actually looks like in everyday life. White. White is complete unawareness. The person in white has no idea what is happening around them, absorbed in their phone, their thoughts, their internal world. They do not know where the exits are. They have not noticed who is in the room. They are oblivious, in the truest sense of the word. And here is the hard truth. Most men live in white most of the time. In ordinary circumstances, white feels fine. Nothing happens, so the unawareness goes unpenalized until something does happen. And then the man in white discovers what white actually costs him. Always too late. Red. Red is the other extreme. Full activation, threat scanning, running worst case scenarios in real time. Red is exhausting. Red is unsustainable. And taken far enough, red does not produce a protector. It produces a man who cannot take his family to a restaurant without mapping every exit and scanning every face. He keeps his family safe by making them afraid to live. That is not protection. That is anxiety in a uniform. Yellow. Yellow is where a protector lives. Present, comfortable, enjoying the moment, and aware. He knows where the exits are without it consuming him. He has clocked the room without making everyone uncomfortable. He is watching his family without hovering, resting in the hot tub, and notices when his daughter goes under. Yellow does not happen by accident. It is cultivated. It is cultivated through practice, through training, through the deliberate decision to take responsibility for the space you are in and the people you are with. And here's the line I want you to take with you. Operating in yellow is not paranoia. It is love with its eyes open. The man who loves his family and has made peace with being unprepared has not found a more trusting version of love. He has found a more comfortable version of irresponsibility. Now here's where I have to slow you down, because most men hear the word protector and they think one thing: physical threat, home invasion, stranger in the parking lot, the dramatic scenario where you stand between your family and a man with bad intentions. That is part of it. That is not most of it. The threats to your family are not primarily physical. The physical threat is real, and a prepared man trains for it, but it is not the threat your family faces most often, or most dangerously. Let me name the full spectrum quickly. The book goes through every one in depth, but you need to hear all of them at least named today. Spiritual protection, emotional protection, educational protection, physical protection, digital protection. 5 fronts. Most men train for one. Some men train for none. A protector covers all 5. But I want to slow down on the one most men underrate, because if you have heard nothing else this episode, I want you to hear this one: spiritual protection. Are you covering your family in prayer? Not as a formality, not as a quick word before dinner, as a deliberate act of spiritual warfare. Do you pray for your wife specifically, not in general, for what she is actually carrying this week? Do you pray for each of your children by name, by specific need, by the particular vulnerability you have observed in them? Do you pray for your grandchildren who have not yet been born? Do you pray for their children? And I want you to sit with that one. Because the man who intercedes generationally is building a wall of protection that extends forward through time in ways he will never fully see. I pray for Abigail, for Sydney, for Felicity. I pray for the men they will one day marry, men who are, right now, being formed somewhere by fathers I do not know. I pray for those fathers, that they would do the work that needs doing in those boys today. And I pray for the children my daughters will raise. That's not a sentiment. That's warfare. And listen, This is where pillar P touches pillar S. The spiritual leader and protector are not two different men. They are the same man, doing two parts of the same work. The man who goes first with God is the same man who covers his family in prayer. If you have not been praying for your family generationally, start tonight. Name them specifically by need, cover them. And here's the counterfeit version of this pillar. And I want you to listen for whether it describes you. The word calls a good father a friend and companion, likable, relatable, fun to be around, the cool dad, more buddy than authority, more peer than protector. And I want to acknowledge there is real value here. A father who is warm and approachable creates a relational environment where his kids actually want to talk to him. That's not nothing. A father who is all authority and no warmth builds walls that keeps his children from bringing him the things he most needs to know. But here's the difference. The friend and companion makes his family feel comfortable. The protector and provider makes his family feel safe. And those are not the same thing. Comfortable means no tension, no friction, no hard conversations. Safe means this man has me. Safe means if something goes wrong, my father will be ready. Safe means I do not have to be afraid of the world because there is a man in my life who has taken responsibility for the space between my family and the things that want to harm it. A child can feel comfortable with a passive father, but a child who feels safe, who has seen their father operate in yellow, who has watched him pray for their future grandchildren, who has experienced him pulling them from the water before the lifeguards even turned around. That child carries something into the world that no amount of comfort can give them. They carry the knowledge that they are worth protecting. That is important. They carry the knowledge that they are worth protecting. That is a gift. And let me put a face on what happens when a father is not in yellow. Because the men who need this pillar most are often the ones who do not recognize themselves in the theological language. They are not passive in the obvious sense. They provide, they show up. They are not cruel. They are just unprepared. And unprepared over time becomes its own wound. It looks like a wife who checks the locks herself every night before bed. Not because her husband is a bad man, because she has learned without a single conversation about it that if she wants it done, she will need to do it. He's not aware enough to notice what needs noticing, and she has stopped waiting for him to notice. She carries a low hum of alertness that has never meant or was never meant to be hers. It follows her into sleep, into her dreams, into the exhaustion that accumulates in a woman who has never fully been able to put the weight down. It looks like a teenage daughter who walks into a situation her father does not know about, with people he has never vetted, in environments he has never assessed, not because she's rebellious, but because nobody ever taught her that the world requires discernment. She was never shown what yellow looks like. Her father was comfortable, and comfortable does not prepare a daughter for the world she is actually going to inhabit. It looks like a family that gets blindsided by the predator who got close over months because no one was watching the pattern, by the content that had been on the phone for a year because no one had the conversation, by the crisis that would not have been a crisis if someone had walked the fence line while it was still quiet. Not dramatic failures, ordinary negligence, the kind that accumulate when a man has decided, without ever deciding it out loud, that someone else is responsible for what happens to his family. Here's the hardest sentence I'll say in this episode. A passive father does not produce fearless children. He produces anxious ones. A passive father does not produce fearless children. He produces anxious ones. Children who learned from his passivity that the world is not being watched over, that nobody is particularly on guard. That safety is something you hope for rather than something someone is actively building around you. That anxiety does not announce itself. It just shows up in the way they move through rooms, in the way they startle, in the way they make decisions when no one is watching, because no one ever was. I want to be honest with you about something. This pillar costs more than the others. Some pillars are about who you are. This one is about what you build, and what you build has a price tag attached. It costs time, reading, training, staying current on the threats, because the digital landscape your daughter navigates today is not the same one that existed 5 years ago. And it will not be the same one that exists 5 years from now. A man who educates himself on this a decade ago and has not updated that education has fallen behind. It costs money. Good training is not free. Quality equipment is not free. The things that keep your family safe, the firearm and the training to use it well, the cybersecurity system for your home network, the books and the courses that keep you sharp, those things cost. A man who spends money freely on his own comfort but not on his family's protection has his priorities inverted. It costs discipline. Operating in yellow does not happen automatically. Praying generationally requires a prayer life that does not quit when you are tired. Now, here's the framing that makes the cost non negotiable. This is stewardship. God did not give you your wife and your children as possessions to enjoy, He gave them to you as a sacred trust, a stewardship you will one day give an account for. And a man who has been entrusted with something sacred invests in its protection before the threat arrives, not after. The farmer who prepares his fence after the livestock escape has not protected his investment. He has responded to a failure. The farmer who walks the fence line in the quiet season, patching the weak spots before anything gets through, that man has stewarded what he was given. And that's what you are doing. Every book you are reading, every training you attend, every prayer you pray before dawn when nothing else is happening, every conversation you have with your kids about what they are seeing online, every time you look up from that hot tub and scan the pool, you are walking the fence line quietly, faithfully, in seasons where nothing is happening, so that when something does happen, and something always eventually happens, you are ready. Here's one thing this week. Pick one of the 5 fronts, just one: spiritual, emotional, educational, physical, digital. Pick the one you know is weakest in your home right now. Not the one your wife would pick, not the one a podcast host would pick for you, the one you already know. And be honest with yourself. Where is the weakness? Again, spiritual, emotional, educational, physical, and digital. Which one is the weakest? Take the one and take one action this week to start closing that gap. If it's spiritual, start praying for your family by name, by need, every morning, generationally if you can. If it's emotional, ask your wife one real question this week and sit with the answer. Watch your kids, notice what is shifting. If it's educational, buy one book, read it, start somewhere. If it's physical, get yourself in front of a trainer or get to the gym, start showing up. If it's digital, have one conversation with your kids about what they are encountering online, not to frighten them, to equip them. One front, one action this week. Because you do not become a protector in the moment of crisis. You become one in the quiet seasons before the crisis comes. The work happens now, in peacetime. The lifeguards were trained, certified, paid to watch that pool. They were in white. I was in the hot tub. I was in yellow, and Abigail is alive. Get yourself to yellow and stay there, because your family is worth the vigilance. Your wife deserves the peace that comes from a man who has taken the fence line seriously. Your children deserve to grow up knowing their father's eyes were always on them. Not because you are afraid, because you love them. And love, at its most protective, does not close its eyes. Built a Father comes out on June 7th, 13 days away. The full chapter on this pillar goes through all 5 fronts in depth. Find it at fatherinthefatherless.org. 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 Next week, we're going to pause and take a break from going through these pillars. Next week, June 2nd, we'll be talking about future podcast episodes that are coming up, where I was a guest appearance on 2 episodes, 2 different podcasts. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's coming up on June 9th. We're going to talk about the book release on June 7th. Stay tuned. I'm Doug Androsky, and this is the Father Blueprint. Show up, stay, and lead.